Jake Ross had built his life like a fortress, layer by layer, rule by rule, brick by polished brick. At 35, he walked through downtown offices in tailored charcoal suits, his footsteps clicking like a metronome of control. People whispered that he was brilliant. Partners admired how he tore apart opposing arguments with surgical precision, but admiration slid off him like rain from a car hood. Jake didn't need it. He needed order. He needed distance, and more than anything, he needed never to resemble the man whose blood he carried. His penthouse, perched high above the city, was a statement of everything he had made himself into. Clean lines, cold marble, glass so spotless it reflected him like an accusation. He spent his nights pacing between a muted TV and the faint hum of the refrigerator, pretending silence was peace. The news of his father's death didn't shake him. The call came early one morning from a number he didn't recognize. A village clerk, with a trembling voice, read from a paper as if the words might crumble. "Your father passed 2 nights ago. You are listed as the sole inheritor. He left a property, a wooden house, outside the village." Jake almost laughed at the phrasing. A property, as if the word could mask what it truly was, a forgotten shack in the damp countryside where his childhood had rotted along with his father's promises. He hadn't spoken to the old man in 12 years, didn't see the point. The man had been a drunk, a ghost with a heartbeat, more familiar with bottles than with his own child. And now he was gone, leaving behind a decaying cabin that Jake wanted nothing more than to sell, bulldoze, erase from existence. Yet something tugged at him, a bitter curiosity maybe, a desire to see the place one last time as proof that the past was truly dead. He packed light, documents, gloves, a flashlight. He told himself it was just business, but the heaviness in his chest said otherwise. The road twisted through the remnants of his childhood like a half-forgotten dream. Potholes filled with murky water reflected the gray sky, as if mocking the distance Jake had put between himself and the man he'd once called father. Rain began to drizzle, feather-light at first, then thickening into a wet insistence that seeped through the collar of his jacket. Every step into the mud brought a squelching protest beneath his shoes, and each inhalation carried the pungent smell of wet earth, rotting leaves, and old wood. The forest closed around him, skeletal branches clawing at the fog, leaving patches of shadow that flickered like half-formed memories. Jake's mind rebelled against silence. The wind whispered names he'd long forgotten. He thought he heard a bottle shatter behind him, a laugh that didn't belong to anyone living. His pulse quickened, the old resentments, the buried grief, the contempt he had carried for years. Every memory surged with a force that felt almost physical. Then he saw it. The cabin, leaning like an old man against the hillside, its windows dark and blank, siding warped by decades of neglect. Smoke-stained eaves hung over a door that looked as if it hadn't been opened for years. The scent of damp pine and mildew hit him like a wave. A gust of wind rattled the door, and for a moment he imagined voices echoing from inside, soft and accusing. His hands itched to reach for the handle, yet hesitated, as if the house itself demanded permission. He stepped closer, boots sinking into mud, and felt the slick sheen of wet wood beneath his fingers when he traced the door frame. The air inside smelled of old pine, dust, and something faintly metallic. Each creak of the floorboards, each groan of the timbers under the weight of years, drew him further into a strange intimacy with the past. His father's absence became palpable, yet it was here, trapped in walls, in shadows, in silence that screamed. Jake's hand slipped on the damp floorboard, and the old cabinet toppled with a reluctant groan. It fell against the wall, sending a cloud of dust swirling into the cold air. He coughed, waving away the motes that hung like tiny ghosts. Behind the cabinet, the wall's plaster had crumbled slightly, revealing a faint outline. A seam barely visible, but enough to awaken a sudden, strange curiosity. Kneeling, he traced the contours with his fingertips. The wood beneath his touch felt hollow in one spot. His pulse throbbed. Instinct and memory collided. Carefully, he chipped away the crumbling plaster, revealing a small rectangular cavity. There it was, a leather-bound notebook, edges curled, pages yellowed and brittle. He opened it gingerly. The first lines, written in a familiar scrawl, made his stomach knot. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I never knew how to say the things I should have, but there is someone you do not know. I hope one day you understand." A shiver ran down his spine. His father's words were sparse, almost fearful, but the meaning struck like a hammer. Another child. Someone Jake had never been told about. The cabin seemed to close in around him, the smell of wet wood and mildew intensifying, as if the house itself exhaled secrets long buried. He read on, each line a jagged mirror reflecting a father he never understood, and a past he never knew existed. The diary hinted at a hidden life, a child left behind in the folds of the years. Jake's hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of revelation. Questions crashed over him like waves. Who? Where? Why? The man who had been nothing but absence and alcohol now whispered a legacy that threatened to overturn everything Jake had believed about family, truth, and himself. Jake's hands shook as he flipped through the brittle pages. His father's handwriting was uneven, almost frantic at times, but the words sketched a shadowy world Jake had never imagined. There were names he didn't recognize, mentions of clandestine meetings, and cryptic phrases. The boy must never know. The debt's unpaid. A sudden chill swept the room. The wind rattled the broken window panes, carrying the scent of wet leaves and something else. Smoke, iron, something unmistakably human. Jake paused. The diary hinted at a network of secrets hidden for decades, and one phrase burned in his mind. "Everything I hid, everything I owed, leads back to the cabin." He realized the cabin was not just a relic of his father's neglect. It was a repository of truths too dangerous to speak aloud. Someone, or something, had been watching. He heard it then. A faint shuffle upstairs, like footsteps over the creaking floorboards. Jake's breath caught. His instincts screamed to leave, but the diary's revelation anchored him in place. His father's sins, his own ignorance, and the mention of the unknown child formed a puzzle that demanded attention. He forced himself to look closer. A folded paper slipped from between the diary's pages, almost like it had been waiting for him. Unfolding it, Jake saw a map, an inked diagram of the surrounding forest, marked with symbols he didn't understand. At the center was a single word, written in capital letters: undone. A low groan came from the floor above, and a door slammed somewhere deep in the cabin. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of mildew, dust, and secrets long buried. Jake felt the weight of a life he thought he understood crumble. The diary was not merely a confession, it was a guide, a warning, and perhaps a trap. He glanced at the map again. One path led toward a clearing far from the road, marked with another word. Here, and somewhere inside, the true secret of his father and the boy Jake had never known waited. Outside, the sky darkened, the wind rose, and a distant howl echoed through the forest. Jake understood that his journey had just begun. Whatever lay ahead was alive, watching, and ready to rewrite everything he believed about family, loyalty, and betrayal.